Do you want to take managing your practice to the next level? How do you handle microaggressions? How do you handle conflict? How do you handle communicating with your team so that they give your patients the best care and the best experience ever? Today on Defocus Media, Optometry's #1 podcast network, we have the one and only Gerard Johnson. Let's go. This is a Defocus Media production.
Audio Jungle.
What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Daryl Glover.
And I'm Dr. Jennifer Lyerly, resident optometry nerd.
And welcome to Defocus Media, Optometry's #1 podcast, where we discuss the hottest topics, latest technology, eyewear, practice management, and more. So sit back, relax, and defocus. What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Daryl Glover. Super excited today because we have a star. And when I say this guy is a star, he truly is a star because I got to work with him firsthand in building $1 million practice. I think it was about within a year, a little over a year and some change.
It was about a year.
So when I'm telling you, this guy has all the answers, all the right solutions to build a practice, to manage a practice, and to make the doctor feel like $1 million. Friends and family, I have Mr. Gerard Johnson. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing well. Excited to be here.
Hey, man, super excited. I feel like it was just yesterday. We were at Eyecare Associates back in South Point and, trying to make the magic happen more than anything. I mean, I remember like it was yesterday. You and I got out and just really started shaking hands and kissing babies. Like literally, we would go to every apartment complex, every store that was in a, 0.5 mile radius, and tell everyone that we were there and that we were the new guys in town and we wanted to take care of their eye care needs. And I learned so much from you that, it's a blessing and honor to have you on today's show. But before we get too deep into figuring out how to communicate and, manage conflict in that office, but most importantly, build a practice through communication, I'd love for all my listeners, all my colleagues out there to learn a little bit more about you. So if you don't mind maybe telling us about your background and how you got into the wonderful world of eye care.
Sure. So I've been in healthcare management for about 15 years now. So I've managed everything from small startup practices like we did with South Point all those years back. I've helped bring new practices to new markets such as Atlanta. I've worked in as a multi-unit contact lens manager here in Atlanta. I was an ABO and NCLE certified ABO and NCLE certified optician. So a little bit of everything. And now I've kind of moved a little bit more into a different area of healthcare with primary care, urgent care. And I've kind of done a little bit all over the world and even helped with things such as open up flu vaccine clinics, COVID vaccination clinics when COVID first happened and they first released those vaccines. I just enjoy healthcare and I enjoy helping people. And most importantly, I love growing people. That's why I got into this is to grow people.
Yeah. And like I said, I got to experience it firsthand. I mean, not only did you grow my team members, but you helped to grow me, right? And I greatly appreciate, all the tips, just being able to observe how you communicated with the front desk, the technicians, the eyewear consultants, and also to help always have our back when it was time to have conversations with bringing in new instruments and technology into the practice and things of that nature. But, what I really want to get into is, I know you wrote 2 articles over the last maybe 6 months or year, and I really wanted to touch on those. And these articles were found on Eyes on Eye Care. Shout out to Matt and his team. They've done a fantastic job. But the 2 articles were Let's Get Settled, 3 Conflicts That Affect Every Eye Care Practice. And then also Be Clear, 3 Steps to Manage Without Micromanaging Your Practice Staff. I don't even know where to start. So I'm just going to, go ahead and jump into the mix. And I really want to get started with just the basics, man. Before we get into these too far, communication, you have I don't know if it's a gift, if it was something that was learned, but I really want to just break down the word communication because I feel like if you have that, not only do you connect with your team members, but you're able to connect with patients and it just puts everything together. So let's kind of start with just the basics of communication in regards to, how you got to where you're at, but also how our colleagues can do better in any healthcare setting that may be out there.
No problem, because when I was a kid, that was a actual major issue for me, is being able to communicate. I didn't like
Okay.
public speaking. I didn't like getting in front of crowds. And I might be aging myself, but in the olden days, when it came time to read, you would have to sit at your desk, and the teacher's like, "You have paragraph number 4," and then you would get up there and you're trying to read off the read line for line, and I just couldn't do it. Right, I would just get nervous, and I just couldn't handle that type of communication. So it's not something that I was born with. This is something that took me time to train, work through. I do give a lot of credit for my graduate school experience. I have a master's in biology, and during that time period, I was a TA. I was forced to stand in front of classes of 50 people and explain something I had no idea what I was talking about, to be completely honest.
Gotcha.
But I was forced to experience that and to try to find ways to communicate this very complex information to people that didn't understand it, right? And that gave me the experience and the comfort to be willing to take those challenges, to say yes, to be willing to have those conflicts and work through those problems in communication. And what I learned from those 3 years of teaching was to take your time, but be clear, right? A lot of times we
Yeah.
have a vision in our head, but we're not clear on how we communicate that to others. And we also want to make sure that we're clearly listening to the other person. First thing I ever learned, it was way back in the days when I first started out in leadership. I was given the opportunity to go to a class on management. And the first thing that they taught us was, it's not what you say, it's what the other person hears.
Oh, say that again, man. Drop that gem, baby. That was a heavy one right there.
Uh, so you could have the best intentions on what you say, but that doesn't mean that's where the person took it, right? So being mindful, being calculated, right? Having these conversations with yourself before you get into that conversation with the other person allows you to be clear and confident in your communication with them, right? So before you go into a situation where you're having to communicate something, a lot of times I'll just sit in my office and I will play through that conversation and role play in my own head.
Oh,
What are going to be the
is that why I would always hear someone talking to themselves in the other room? I thought you might have been a little cuckoo at times.
I was going through the situations, role playing this conversation, and this is something that when I go to high schools to talk about, and then sometimes I get asked that conversation. You seem very confident. How does that? Well, I have these conversations before I have these conversations, right?
I love
Especially
that.
when you're having a conversation that's not very comfortable, right? Take your time. You don't have to rush into a conversation, all right? Just because you know you need to have it doesn't mean you need to run into that conversation unprepared. Take your time. Go through the good and the bad. What's the pros and cons? What's the worst case scenario? What's that
Right.
doctor going to get you back with when you go in to talk about they need to speed up a little bit faster, right? What's going to be their response? You've heard it before. You know what's coming. So what's your response to that? Are you prepared for that conversation? Are you prepared to be honestly, and have those conversations with yourself? If I would walk around and talk to myself like a crazy person in my office. Some people it might help with other people to just sit down and write it out, right? By putting pen to paper, it gets that emotions out and it makes you pause for just a second to think about what you're saying and what you're writing. And then, therefore, when you go into that communication, you're prepared, right? One of the things that I use to kind of prevent micromanaging and hoarding over people is what I call my roles. So whenever I'm going to a conversation and I'm giving somebody a new responsibility, I have I have a little spreadsheet that I use called a role.
Okay.
So
Let's break that down. Let's jump into
yeah,
microaggressions because I think it's definitely a buzzword in today's society, right? And I think it's one of those things that a lot of us don't even realize we're doing this. But I know you have a fantastic story with a team member that really helped to express, that potential microaggression. So, let's just kind of take it from the top of when you experienced this, how did you experience this? And what did you learn from this experience? And then kind of the roadmap, the new plan that you have to do away with this, and maybe even list some examples as well.
sure. So in my case, I was very fortunate that I had a employee that was very forthright. Right. I was new. I was young. I was full of vinegar, trying to do my best, and I was just doing too much. A lot of times, as managers, our insecurities lead us to just do too much. We're always at the front desk. Let me do that. Let me do this. Where sometimes you just got to sit back. Not
Yeah.
necessarily relax, but give your team space. They know what they're doing. If they don't, that's you taking the time to communicate that with them. But you can't be overbearing and domineering. So the general consensus for the definition of micromanagement is a top down level of domineering management. Everything, all decisions, even the simplest thing, goes through you, right? The problem with that is that stagnates your team, right? So that you're going to have turnover. Your team feels stifled. They don't feel like they're learning. They don't feel like they're growing, so they're leaving, right? They either
Yeah.
grow within your practice or they go somewhere else to grow. A lot of times you're going to slow down your efficiency, right? If every time somebody needs to make a very simple decision on which copy paper to order, then they're wasting that time waiting for you to make that very simple and stupid decision, right?
Right.
Give them that opportunity. It's not that serious, right? Be willing to delegate those things that can be delegated. And the other component is ego. As a leader, a lot of times that ego gets in the way, and you see that kind of with frustration. You see kind of those micromanagers acting out. In a lot of cases, they're taking control because they're afraid to lose control. They're confident in their own abilities to manage what's going on.
Right.
So therefore, they have to be the voice, right? They're blocking out all competing ideas because they're afraid their ideas aren't good enough. And so you see that, and you'll even see it in the way that they train the people. You'll sometimes hear a micromanager say, "Well, I don't want them to get their ABO certification because what if they leave?" Right?
Yeah. That's bad, man. You never want to hold someone back. You always want people to grow, I mean, I remember when you left the practice that I was a part of, and it was because you needed to move with your family. I think it was maybe your wife had a better opportunity down in Georgia, so you had to make that leave. And I was just like, well, damn, I'm gonna miss you, man. But family first, no doubt. And then now look, you went down to Georgia, you changed the game, you helped with some practices. Now you're helping with primary care facilities, and you've grown tremendously. And now we're having this conversation about communication. So again, you never want to hold anyone back. You always want to give them that platform, add value to them so that they can go out and empower others as well.
Yeah. A lot of times I would even tell my staff, if you're going to leave, I have no problem with that. Just don't embarrass me by leaving for a linear job, right? Do better, right? Get a promotion, get that extra 50 cents, be a leader, get a management job. Don't leave me for less. Right? That hurts my feelings. Right. If you see opportunity for a better job, I'll help you write that resume, man. Because I want the best for you. And what happens with that is they feel confident and comfortable with you that maybe they do come across the opportunity, and they'll give you the heads up first, because they're not leaving you in a lurch. You're not 2 weeks out finding out about it. They'll come to you like, hey, I'm seeing this. It's a better opportunity. I'm like, hey, let's talk about it. Let's get you prepped. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, this is also an opportunity for me to bring somebody else in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can cross those paths where you bring somebody else in and they're leaving and they're willingly training because they're excited that you gave them that opportunity.
Right.
You help them grow.
Stay.
Right. Right. You help them grow, and they're excited that they're saying nothing but good things about you. And that also affects the other person that isn't leaving.
Yeah.
They see how you treated that other person, that you actually cared about them more than that task and that function at hand.
Yeah.
Right. And so that all leads back into the kind of ideal of micromanaging, where the team also sees that you're not willing to let them go. Right. If your opportunity, if you see that there's something simple, you see that person a lot of times you can see that leader early. You can see that leader before they even see that in themselves.
Right.
All right. And you're telling them, hey, this is going to be the thing for you. I see coming right now. I actually had this young man, did an interview for him. I was interviewing for a front desk job. Talking to him, he was well put together, very smart. I was like, honestly, this is going to be the job for you, but in 5 years, you're not going to be working for me. If I don't do this right, you can't be here 2 years from now. My plan for you is 2 years from now, you're going to be in a supervisor position. And
well, I like that though, Gerard, because it's you see the potential in people and you letting them know up front, and you're creating a career framework or pathway for them, right? Because a lot of times folks get hired, but they don't know what their next step is. And it's the reason why you have this is because you've mastered not to have these microaggressions, but also to be able to communicate and put people in the right positions to be able to grow and elevate, right? So I like that approach. I like that mindset.
You the key to leading is to being willing to listen, right? And a lot of times during that, even during the interview process, everyone asks that same question: "What do you want to be in 5 years?" All right, everyone
Yeah.
says that. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? But a lot of times we aren't listening, right? We're hoping that they're going to say they're going to be with us in 5 years or something like that. Whereas you take that opportunity, it's like, okay, so this is where you want to be in 5 years. You want to be a supervisor. Great. So these are the things that the steps that we're going to put in place for you, so you'll be ready when the opportunity arises.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. You're going to school right now. You're just working here at the front desk until you graduate. Great. What do you want to do when you graduate? All right. It's a completely different field. Well, these are the things that we're going to teach you to help you grow as a person, so that when you're ready to graduate, you're going into that workforce better prepared. Right. You have all these additional skills that you can bring to the table to somebody else, and that gets them engaged in the actual work. And therefore, you're not. Yet again, that goes back to that freedom of leadership. So a lot of times when I bring in somebody new, I'll be pretty straightforward with them. My job as your manager is not to tell you to do what to do every single step of the day. My job is to build the picture frame. I built the picture frame. Right. I gave you the roles, your responsibilities, and my expectations. Your job is to paint the picture. Right.
Nice.
Over time, we'll talk about the picture. Why did you put the sun right there? That's great. That you have a reason for that sun. That's great for me. You're within these rules and regulations that we set in these expectations. And when you're clear about those expectations, when somebody steps outside of those expectations, they know it. Right.
Yeah.
When it happens, they're not shocked that you're having this conversation because they didn't meet that expectation. You are
Right.
very clear from the start that these are the expectations. And
Yeah.
so they're prepared for that conversation as well.
I love it, man. I love it. And I want to take a step back. We've been talking about microaggressions, and you mentioned in this article common behaviors of micromanagers, right? And I just want to list a couple so that folks may see them in themselves and may want to make that change, that pivot, or maybe partner with you and consult with you to be able to help educate them on how to change these things. But you have scrutinizes every action, always pushes back deadlines, excessively requests updates, is never entirely satisfied with others' work, disputes insignificant details, fights against decision making autonomy, takes pride in correcting others' mistake, possesses a my way or the highway view, and I mean the list goes on and on. And with this, I know you created your whole 3 steps, but part of these three steps, something that you mentioned was the role method. And I know you alluded to it earlier, but I'd love to really just break down what role means and how that plays out, because I love how you just went through these 4 different steps and summarized it, because it's a game changer. It's something that I feel like every person that's in a leadership position should practice.
Yeah, and something I've developed over years where I kept finding myself having these conversations with people. And at the end of it, they would go off, do the task, and then we'll meet back to discuss that something didn't go right. No one would take ownership, right? No one knew exactly. Everyone's pointing this way. It wasn't my responsibility. It wasn't this. And there seemed to be kind of a lack of understanding around everything. So now going forward, whenever I have a conversation and I'm giving a new responsibility to a team member, I sit them down with this sheet of paper, right? I print it up, type it up. And so there's no misunderstanding whatsoever what we're going to actually go over. So role stands for responsibility. What are your responsibilities that I'm assigning you? So there's no confusion about what I'm expecting you to complete. The O in role stands for ownership. So you know that you are responsible for these tasks. No one else. If these responsibilities aren't met, I'm talking to you, right? Even if you're working with the group, there's still an understanding of what your part in that group is, in that group effort. The L stands for larger purpose, right? You have these responsibilities, but a lot of times people don't know how to connect that to the larger purpose of patient care, right? What does me calling that patient at the end of the day when their glasses are checked in have to do with the larger purpose of the practice? Well, this is about the patient care. When you're delivering that quality care, you checked in those glasses, you're giving that person an opportunity to see a little bit sooner, right? You
Right.
call them by the end of the day, they know the next day that they can make plans They come see
Yeah.
you. They can make plans to come pick up their glasses. I'll be over there a little bit later. They called me at 12 o'clock. I can stop by there, pick up my new glasses, and have them ready for my new interview tomorrow. All right. Helping people connect to that larger purpose and that larger vision that you're creating within your practice. And last,
let me ask you this before you get into the E.
Yeah.
You know, there's a new generation of younger colleagues out there. And I'm curious to know, are you seeing more of that generation connect with the purpose or not? Because I see it both ways, right? I have some young folks that, man, that's so crazy. I'm saying young. I'm like the old guy. Dry, we're the old people now,
Yeah, I
man.
remember when everyone was worried about millennials taking over and ruining employment.
But no, but on a serious note, like, what are you seeing, you know, in these different modes of practice in regards to, you know, these team members adapting or connecting really with the purpose? You know, is this just something that people see on paper and they're not really living it? They're not really understanding the core values of the organization. Are they really living out the purpose day in and day out? Because I know in my office at my eye doctor, that's a part of our DNA. You have no choice but to live that, and we connect with people or hire people that, you know, that's innate in them naturally to be a part of our team. So I'm curious to know, what are you seeing on your side?
Well, the younger generation thinks of themselves as a brand, right?
Okay.
It's just the fact they grew up with technology, they grew up with text messages, they grew up posting their pictures, and it's all about helping you connect the purpose of the company to their own personal purpose.
Ooh, hey, I love it. I teach a class on that. You hit the nail on the head with that one, baby.
and, and that goes back to listening again and talking, right? Listening actively to what they're saying. So when it comes time to that conversation, you know what makes them tick. You understand what drives them. Also in the article, I talk about work language. You know, everyone's heard of the ideal of the 5 love languages. It's the same thing with work, right? Understanding what makes that person tick and what motivates that person within work, right? A lot of
Yeah.
times we just think throwing money at a person is what motivates them to want to do better. Money's great. People love money, but that's not going to be the
No.
driving purpose within their work and what's going to help them decide that I need to be better at my job. Right? That's you making that connection, that larger purpose of the vision of the company with the larger purpose of their life. Right? And we're in healthcare. That's easy. Right? People like helping other people.
Right.
And I remember a few years back, there was an article in Yahoo about how the career with the highest level of satisfaction within it was optometry. You're right. And that's because that moment that you give that little 5-year-old their first pair of glasses and they look at a leaf, right?
Yeah.
What are those little green things on that tree? Well, those are leaves, right? Right. They look at the back of the hand and they're awed at the wrinkles on the back of the hand that they've never seen before. Right. Those moments that you connect to for those patients and they understand for those. And that goes back to what I mentioned, like calling person at the end of the day. You're like, hey, we want to make sure we're calling them so they can plan for the day. For example, I know you're very busy. You have kids, you're a single mother, you're working through. Wouldn't it be easier if we called you so you could plan around that?
Right.
You're like,
right.
yeah, that does make sense, right? You're connecting that purpose and vision of your company to the purpose of the vision of the person, and that comes by listening.
I love it. So it's all about with the new generation that's going to take care and push eye care forward. It's all about them as a brand, a personal brand, and connecting their personal brand with the company's brand. And once you have that alignment with the purpose and core values, you know, you make that change, you make that impact. I love that, man. Again, I got a course on that. And for anyone that's listening, that's interested in me coming to talk to your students about it, feel free. It's known as How to Become Everyone's Favorite Optometrist. So just email me, defocusmedia@gmail.com, and we can make that magic happen. But let's go to E, because E is, you know, a big deal, right? Because I feel like if you don't have this part, then all the other parts don't mean anything. So what does the E stand for in role?
And E is expectations, right? A lot of times you may even heard me say, we are at expectations, right? You study for that test, you expect to get a good grade on that test. Right, you played around and waited to the last minute. When you get that, you know, that C, you expected us. Yeah, that's about right. You know, so you connecting that expectation and you being clear about that expectation. Right,
Yeah.
This is exactly what I'm expecting out of you for these responsibilities. Um, the easiest, like I was talking about with checking in glass and calling at the end of the day. My expectation is at the end of the business day, all the glass that came in are called, right? It's a very clear, understandable expectation, that we always hear talk about for years, the ideal SMART goals, right? It's clear and understandable. And you're having that conversation at that point. So if they have a question that doesn't work out for them, they can express in this moment what they're missing in that expectation. And that's set. And so there, and what I also tell them is when to expect me to check this. Right, I'm not going to look over your shoulder, and I'm not going to ask you about this every single day. At the end of the day, when it's time to check glasses, I'll swing by. I'll check the little checklist and make sure that it's done. Right, and then if it's not done, you haven't met those expectations. Well, then now it's time for a conversation. We both understand this conversation is happening, so there's no surprise, and it's open, and we're getting to the meat of what we need to get to.
I love it. I love it, man. So the role method, responsibility, ownership, larger purpose, expectations, and this is under, how you create strategies to manage the practice staff without micromanaging. And the first step is to be clear about expectations, and you use the role method in order to make that happen. Now, I want to kind of pivot and go to the next step, which is take a walk. What does that mean? Because I saw that. I said, "What the hell?" So I'm curious to know, what do you mean by take a walk, man? Let's talk about this. Are you talking about walk out the practice for the rest of my life and never come back? My team there abandoned? I mean, what are we talking about here, Gerard?
It's important to be present without being a pest.
Ooh,
right.
Okay.
So whenever I first walk into practice, first thing I do in the morning is I walk around. Right. I'm looking at faces. Right. How's everyone doing? Is that person looks like they're a little bit sad, a little bit frustrated. I need to swing back and check with them personally. Right. I'm going through and kind of getting, I call it my vibe check. What's the vibes, right? How's, is it one of those days where everyone's kind of talkative? Maybe I need to kind of, I might have to step in and help people get focused. Is everybody really quiet? Is everybody sad? Just getting kind of a general idea of what's going on with that practice. You can't manage your practice if you don't know what's going on. So that's my first walk of the day. Usually around lunchtime, I take another walk through the practice, see how everyone's doing. I might tell people I'm leaving for the day. Sometimes I might not, but they see me walking through the practice, making that circle. And at the end of the day, before I leave, I make another walk through the practice. Sometimes you engage with the person and have conversation, but you don't have to all the time, right? That's all about being present. What you'll find is that your staff will kind of figure out when you're going to make that walk if you're consistent with it. And so a lot of those little tiny questions that might pop up, whether popping up in your office, they'll hold on to. Like, well, I know I'll see Gerard. I know I'll see Gerard he takes his walking about another 10 or 15 minutes.
I like that.
They know when I come around, they can ask, right? When they have a conversation, you're not mean, you're happy face. Oh, sure, I can answer that question for you. And you're taking care of it in the walk, and they feel comfortable. And yet again, once one person sees that happen, other people see it happen. They understand that that open door policy is also an open conversation policy when they see.
Yeah. No, I like that. I think even though it's not behind closed doors, it opens up a more of an intimate relationship and conversation because they feel so open to communicate with you. But the thing that I really love is it allows you to do what you need to do in your office without someone coming to knock on the door and taking the time for you to actually manage instead of putting out fires, right? So
Exactly.
I love that approach, and I love that it's almost like kind of like reverse psychology in the way that you presented it.
Yeah.
But that's dope, man. So you got your morning stroll, your midday stroll, and before you leave stroll, essentially.
Yep.
And you're essentially checking the vibes of the office.
Yep. And they're seeing that presence. And if you see something, yeah, maybe you'll say something, right? Sometimes I'll see something and maybe I might not say something in that moment, but I take a mental note. I need to check back with that person. I see them over in the corner with the cell phone. I'll pull them in just a second. That also kind of goes to, they understand that you're always, I don't want to say watching, but you're present and that you understand. So later on, I might pull that person to the side, like, hey, I noticed you're spending a little bit extra time. Is everything okay? Right. Yeah. You're coming to them. What is everything okay? Not why are you on your phone?
Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one because it's crazy. A lot of people spend time on their phones. It's just, I almost feel like it's a part of our hands now, right? Regardless if you're at work, regardless if you're at church, if you're out at restaurant, whatever it may be, we always have our cell phones. But, as leaders, as doctors, as team members, I mean, the first thing we do think is, what are you on social media? Get off the phone, get to work, right? But what if there is something that's going on? What if there is a loved one that's sick? What if there is a child that's at home and they're trying to make sure that they're okay and they don't need anything? We should really approach that with a little more comfort and a little more thought in regards to checking on that team member. I mean, that's a great call out.
Yeah, I think it's a philosophy known as, I believe it's like Hanlon's razor, where your initial expectation or assumption is not the worst, it's the best. You assume the best in people, right? And when you come to them with that assumption, like, hey, is there anything going on, and notice you're on your phone, if they're messing around, like, well, no, there's nothing really going on, I'm sorry, I was on my phone, but maybe there is an issue, right? And that creates that opportunity for that have a conversation. You coming to them with, how's everything going, is everything okay? They see it as you actually care, right? You're just not out here bossing them around looking for excuses to kind of crack down on them. You're coming to them with understanding first.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's heavy there. And now that we're having this conversation, I'm thinking about something that I took from you a long time ago. And I think I actually used to always pick on you whenever you would say it, because I just chuckled and chuckled and chuckled. But now I say it all the time. And it may not be the exact same thing, but I always ask people, how may I be of service, my friend, or something like that. And I'm like, Gerard's in my damn head, man. Get out of my head, Gerard. And I'll pick that up and I say that every day, probably 10 times a day, either in the practice, outside of the practice. I was talking to someone in my family and I said that, and my wife was like, why are you talking to them like you're at work? And I was just like, it's just part of my DNA now. So
it's all about being of service, right? Like a lot of times I go through and I have these meetings with my staff, once a month, and we're kind of doing check-ins. And at the end of every single meeting that I have with my staff members, with my check-in, it's, how can I be better?
Right.
The first time you ask that question, it's awkward. They're like, they kind of look at you sideways, like, you're all right. But, right? And it's like, be honest, like, no, I want to get better, right? Yeah. This is opportunity. I was just talking about you and your performance, but if you're not willing to be open with me on how I can get better. So how can I be of service to you? How can I be a better manager to you? And being willing to drop that ego and take it. So sometimes it might tell you something you don't want to necessarily hear, but that's all right. Doesn't mean you don't need to hear it.
Yeah, 100%. So let's go ahead and go to number 3, man. This one's a heavy one. This is gonna knock people out of their chairs, because I don't think a lot of people know how to even do this, and it's difficult to make happen. But number 3, hire competent learners. What does that mean?
A lot of times a micromanager is going to hire a drone. They're going to hire somebody that they think they can control, and it'll be just like them and do exactly what they want them to do. And that doesn't help your practice grow. That's not bringing creativity and new solution problem solving to your practice. What you hire that person to do on day 1 is not going to be what they do 12 months later.
Right.
Technology is moving too fast. Equipment's moving too fast. We have new lenses that's dropping every year, new contact lenses, new drops. Everything is changing every single day. So you need somebody that it will be able to adapt. They're sturdy in their ability to understand change, because change is going to happen whether you want it to or not, right? That change is coming. And so you want learners and people that are comfortable with learning, but also understand how they learn.
Right.
Because everyone learns a little bit differently. Some people need to have their hand held when they learn. That's not a problem. That's not a bad thing. If they understand, like, hey, I need you to spend a little bit extra time with me, go step by step, and then I'll get it. That's perfectly fine. Right. Sometimes you got that quick learn. You can do the little morning huddle, have that conversation. They got it. Boom. I got it. I'm moving. Right. I don't need you to hold my hand. But making sure at the beginning that you get people that understand how they learn and understand the importance of learning. Right. So in that article, I have a few suggestions on types of questions that you can use.
Yes.
You get to those answers. And a lot of times it's important when you ask those questions that you don't talk anymore. Right. You ask the question and then you pause. It's okay for there to be a bit of awkward silence. It's their job to fill in the blanks to that conversation. Because a lot of times when there's a little bit of awkward silence, somebody pauses, then you start prompting them. Like, do you like somebody to talk to you? Do you like this? Do you like, no, you ask the question and then you give them opportunity to answer. And that's how you get the true answer to these questions.
I love it, man. I love it. And I want to, touch on a couple of these questions. You have interview questions to assess learning ability. What is something you taught yourself on the job in a previous position? Can you describe your process of learning something new? What is something you plan to learn for this job? Tell me about the time you were asked to do something you had never done before. How did you react? Change you had to deal with? How did you adapt to the change? And the last one, recall a time when you were assigned a task outside of your job description. How did you handle that situation? What was the outcome? I think that's my favorite question out of all of them, right? Because that puts someone in a position of not being a robot, right? Doing something that, they got to think outside of the box, something that may be new, maybe need a partner, maybe need to get cross-trained on some type of activity. So I love all these tips that you have when it comes to being a micromanager. I do want to spend some time today also just touching briefly on conflict in a practice. Because, in today's society, I mean, you look at the world of social media, and people can find something and get on the side, and sometimes I feel like social media could be in a practice as well, right?
Yeah.
So literally, right?
Oh,
So
yeah.
you touched on three different conflict scenarios. Number one being gossip, number two being ambiguity of roles and responsibilities, and then number three, miscommunication. And I know you kind of touched on miscommunication earlier, but I really would like to spend a little bit of time on each one of these topics. And I think the first one that we should start on is number one, which is gossip, because I feel like gossip can kill an office. Gossip can kill your bottom line. Gossip will drive a doctor insane. So let's talk on that piece, man. How do you manage that, man?
Yeah, the first way to manage gossip is to understand that you're not going to manage gossip, right?
Okay. Okay.
Studies show that 90% of all employees gossip. It's going to happen,
Okay.
right? You can tell them don't do it. They'll say yes. And then they'll go back and spread gossip, right? It's all about kind of controlling said gossip, right?
Okay.
So gossip isn't necessarily a bad thing. There can be positive gossip, right? If you know there's a change coming in your practice, like I, once I was opening up a large practice in Atlanta, right? Took over. There's a way that the practice was doing things, and one of those ways that they were doing things is not being open on Saturday. Saturday in optometry, honestly, is a money day, right? You're
Yeah.
going to be busy. People have the day off. They're going to work. They're willing to spend that money. They got paid on Friday, have a little bit of time. They're going to spend more time to get
Right.
their eyes checked, right? And so, in that situation, that beforehand, I know it's coming. I'm going ahead and spreading that gossip now. Like, hey, just something to be mindful of, right? This might be something that's going to come, right? You're seasoning those ideas, spreading good gossip. So staff members are going ahead and working their way through that idea. They're talking about it amongst themselves. They're coming to grips with it, making decisions. So therefore, when that idea comes, right, the gossip is already spread. Everyone's fully aware of it. No one's shocked,
Right.
right? When they say, hey, the decision's been made in 2 months, we're going to go to Saturdays. No one's like, what? Everyone had already heard the gossip that I had circulated months before that this is something that's going to be a possibility.
I like that, man. You,
Right?
you you put a spin on gossip. It's now positive gossip, right? And it's just really, putting it out there for people to start to ponder upon whatever idea, concept, or new process or service that you may have in the practice. And it gives them some time to kind of ease into it instead of saying, you know what, we're going to be seeing patients on Saturday starting tomorrow. At least you've kind of warmed them up, cooked them up to the
Yeah.
concept and idea, and it's just a smooth transition into that. I never looked at gossip in that way. I always looked at it like, okay, this person's talking about this person's doing this at home, and everyone in the practice knows, and they saw them on social media, and this, that, and the third. But you put that spin on it. So to your point, we can't control it, but we can at least put a spin on it in a positive way and use it to our advantage and try to, regulate maybe some of the other stuff that may cook up in the periphery.
Right. So when some of the bad gossip bubbles up and gets to be a problem, right? A lot of times I'll introduce the idea of Socrates' three filters.
Okay, fire away. I don't know these.
So with three filters, this is old story about Socrates. He had an old friend of his who's walking down the street. The guy walks up and wants to tell him about this gossip about his friend, right? And his three
Okay.
filters were pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Is what you say about my friend true? Right? Is this a true thing that's happening? Well, the guy was like, I'm not sure, but let me tell you this gossip. I gotta tell you this thing. He's like, okay. Is what you want to say? Tell me about my friend. Is it a good thing? Right? Did something happen, or we celebrate? Is it a good thing? He's like, oh no, this is really bad. I got to tell you this thing. It's like, okay. So is what you want to tell me about my friend useful? Right? How does this apply to me, and how can I use this information? Well, it doesn't really apply to you. Well, what you want to tell me about is not good, not useful, and you're not even sure if it's true. I think I'm okay with not learning this thing about my friend, right?
Yeah.
And by introducing that idea of Socrates' three filters, it's not going to stop gossip, but it's going to give your staff a tool to kind of think through their own conversations and own gossip, right? They'll
Right.
have that second thought in the back of their heads. Is this I'm necessarily true? Am I? And they'll start kind of thinking these things through. So even if
Yeah.
the other person tells them this, it'll be in the back of the mind that these are the three things I need to kind of take into account as well.
Hey man, I'm even thinking about you should put that on all their computers or their workstations so that every day they actually see it and maybe
Yeah.
even have them speak it into existence as well, right? So that way they're living it. And it's part of their DNA as well, my friend. So I like that approach. That's unique.
Yeah, I had the three filters posted in my break room. I had
Ah,
one
see?
practice where it
Of
was a
course you
major
would,
issue.
Gerard. Of course you would.
Yeah, it was a major issue. We went over three filters in a monthly meeting. It was kind of part of those conversations, and the three filters were kind of posted where, yet again, you're giving people tools, right,
Yeah.
to help them with their communication.
All right. I like it. Well, let's transition to conflict number two, man, about these roles and responsibilities when people are a little lost in the sauce in regards to what they're supposed to do. Let's talk about that.
A lot of times these conflicts arise because two people have a task to do and they don't know who's responsible for what. And that kind of goes back to what I talked about before, utilizing that role spreadsheet, right? So everybody is fully aware of not only what their responsibilities are, but what their responsibilities are downstream, right? You're communicating how each person falls within that larger purpose of the practice and success. And so, therefore, when a mistake happens, no one's pointing the finger. They understand that, all right, my expectation for this process was this, right? I did my process, and I understand what the breakdown is, and therefore we can kind of communicate where those breakdowns are happening and the friction. But also, what it does is a lot of times people don't want to take responsibilities for the portions that they know that they didn't complete. They don't want
Right.
to take responsibilities and ownership for that tough part, right? And so then
Yeah.
that's where the conflict is because everyone's pointing the finger at the other person for not completing that their portion. Whereas if you're upfront and everyone is fully on board with what their expectations are and what your expectation is for the entire team, then yet again you're eliminating a lot of those conversations and that friction that can actually take place.
Got it. And this is also where you can incorporate the role method as well
Exactly.
underneath this. So I love the overlap. Let's take it home with miscommunication, conflict number three. Again, I know we touched on this briefly, high level, but this is an opportunity to spend a couple minutes to get into the weeds with this because miscommunication can set you up for complete failure. And I want all my colleagues out there to thrive in their practice and to communicate in their practice. So let's talk about miscommunication, Gerard.
So a lot of times, especially in my experience working with doctors, are they learned their craft, they learned what they went to school for, but they didn't necessarily learn how to communicate what they needed done to their staff,
Mm,
right? And so you have this mixed communication where the doctor believes that they told you. That goes back to what we talked about earlier. It's not what you said; it's what the other person heard. But the
right.
doctor believes that they communicated. This is how I like this to be done, right? These are the processes. This is the steps that I like to take place. But they didn't necessarily communicate that with that staff member, right? They just assumed in their heads that the staff member should just know that what they're supposed. And a lot of times, this is what one of the reasons why like great pro athletes make terrible coaches, right? As far as Jordan's concerned,
Mm.
I grab the ball, I cross somebody over, head fake and dunk on 3 people. That's how it's supposed to work. Why can't you do that? Right?
Come on, man! Don't put our basketball team to shame here in North Carolina, man. You
Right.
once were living in this state as well.
Right. But as a doctor, like you're great at this. You're literally a doctor, right? You went to school for this, you're expert at this, and it comes easy to you because you're great at this.
Right,
That team member might not necessarily understand that as well. So they're
right,
not as great as you are. You're awesome. Congratulations. But you need to be patient and understand that you need to communicate exactly what you need done. So if you need steps A and B and C done, right? Ask that person yet again. You're going to that person with understanding and assuming the best. Like, why did you think that was the best way to do this? And give them opportunity yet again. Ask the question. Don't fill in the blanks and wait. Right?
right.
Let them speak, and therefore you can understand what truly is going on. A lot of times we speak to hear ourselves. We talk and then we're waiting for our turn to jump in. Right? We're not listening to what was coming in. We're waiting for our turn, like it's like double dutch.
Right, right.
uh, with the health system I work with now, one of the classes that I teach is called Safety First, right? And
Okay.
it's about teaching how communication can prevent hurt and harm to coming to patients, right? And
Nice.
how we're communicating, how we're smiling to that patient warms them up. So therefore they're more likely to open up and give you more information,
Yeah, yeah.
right? How you're double checking if you're giving somebody a diagnosis, you're telling them and then you're waiting, right? Give that brain time to communicate to the eyes and go through the emotions so that they can ask a question, right? And so a lot of times that miscommunication is that we're not waiting to listen to the answer, and we're not adjusting to the answer that we're given, right? We know that we want it to done this exact way, whereas the miscommunication is that person's telling you, I can't do it that way. That way isn't working for me. So listening to them, understanding them, and then making adjustments to what they told you.
Man, heavy stuff, Gerard, man. This is why you're a writer. This is why you're a leader. This is why you're a trainer. I mean, you got all the right, communication, all the right dialogue, all the right tools in your tool bag to take a practice to the next level. Something that I always like to ask all my guests that come on this show, all my colleagues, is, when it's your turn to hang up that phoropter, when it's your turn to retire, when it's your turn to leave that legacy behind, what do you want to be known for, man? Because you've impacted my life, and I kind of know what you're going to be known for, but I'm curious to know if it aligns with what you want to leave behind in this world of healthcare.
One of the things I often think about, and this not just with healthcare, with my kids, are you live forever through the lessons that you teach others,
Mm.
right? So if somebody takes one thing that I taught, like how can I be of service, right? If they take
You're in
uh,
my head, man.
if they take that little spreadsheet about roles,
Yeah.
if they take a lesson, a few years back, I ran into a guy that I trained at the front desk. And now he's a big wig over in the tech community because he got his master's degree. And what he remembered was our conversation about his socks, right?
Wow.
And he showed up to work with these ugly white tube socks. He was dressed nice, and he had these ugly white tube socks. And I put him to the side, like, "Hey, man, you're really smart. You understand things. But with those socks, you're not going to go anywhere because people are going to look at you a certain way, right? It's all about professional decorum and presenting yourself in a professional way." And he took that, right? And now he couldn't wait. He connected with me on LinkedIn. Couldn't wait to tell me about how, hey, I got great socks. I have like drawers of great great socks that I wear every day to work. And that small thing, that small moment impacted in a large way.
Love it, man. I love it. And I align with exactly what you said. And, Gerard, I want to thank you for coming on the show today, man. This has been fantastic. I feel like we're back in South Point talking shop, figuring out how can we take the practice to the next level? How can we get that, high NPS score? How can we make that first $1 million? I always brag and tell people about, how we built that practice. And some of them don't believe it, man. And you're living proof that we were able to partner. That general manager, that doctor, that partnership, being on the same page. That's what elevated our practice, right? We knew what our goal was. We knew that we wanted to make sure that we could take care of any patient that walked through that door, but we knew we had to get the patients in first. And I thank you for everything that you've done for my career, for my family. And I hope that you continue to live your dreams and push this healthcare profession forward. For those that are out there that are listening to this and they're engaged to this and they want to learn more about this, or maybe even have you come into their practice and consult, what's the best way for them to connect with you? Is it LinkedIn? Is there an email? I mean, how can someone get in touch with you and build something special?
Best way right now is through LinkedIn. You can find me, Gerard Johnson, MS, on LinkedIn. Hit me up there. I also have a articles with Eyesight. I was eyes on eyecare, and also on my LinkedIn you'll see a variety of other articles, over a dozen of them that I've written for other publications as well, dealing with kind of healthcare and leadership.
I love it, man. Well, you're definitely a leader. You have definitely changed eye care, but most importantly, you have changed healthcare. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. This has been fantastic. Make sure you go to your practice tomorrow and implement some of these changes. If you're a micromanager, please stop. If you're having issues with communicating, please stop. Listen to this podcast. Take out a pen, a notepad, take your notes, and take it to the next level. Gerard, my man, next time I'm in Georgia, man, I got to stop by and see you and the family, man. Send my love to everyone. And thanks so much for being a part of the Defocus Media Optometry podcast. For everyone out there, stay healthy, stay positive, and stay blessed. And until next time, peace. Hey, family, if you enjoyed this full podcast, don't miss out on more engaging content. Check out the next episode right here. And for the latest updates, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Your support means the world to us. Catch us in the next episode. Peace.